what pisses me off about my space? What pisses you off about the industry you're in, the space you're working in? And how do you want to offer a solution that might be different than what other people are offering? And sometimes just slight tweaks are innovative in and of themselves. Your job is the transfer of emotion. If you want to get people to do something, what do you need to do first? You need to get them to think differently. But if you want to get people to think differently, what do you need to do first? Get them to.
Most of you have heard our story and how Lacey and I, at a time when we literally had nothing, we were rebuilding. I had come to the United States from Costa Rica, attempted to build our business, then went through a divorce and a partnership dissolution pretty much at the same time, which is like 2 divorces. Like that's like compounding the financial impact. Then shortly after that, meet Lacey. We start to date. I'm living with my 2 daughters in a 1-bedroom apartment and come up with this crazy idea. I'm teaching at Life West. I read this book called Book Yourself Solid, and I'm like, man, this is the formula. This is the thing. This is what will help us. And I go to Lacey and I was like, we're going to hire Michael Port. And she was like, how are we going to do that? We don't have any money. There's 3 of us living in a 1-bedroom apartment. And I was literally like, I believe it was a monthly commitment at that time. And I was like, we just have to get the first month. We just get the first month. I read the book. This is liquid. This is paper gold. We learn how to do this. I will get enough money once I get to meet him and he starts to tell us what to do to pay the second month. And as long as this works out, then eventually we'll make more money than what we have to pay to keep going, and we'll be fine. And thankfully, I mean, and also too, giving credit, Lacey was like, that's crazy, but let's do it. And so we did. I went out to New Hope, where they were hosting their events. I was in a room with people, and I often share that I didn't stay at the hotel. I believe it was a Marriott, I think, that it was at. And Michael's car, I think it was a BMW out front. His license plate said, "You rock" on it. And I was like, yeah, that's Michael's car. But I couldn't afford to stay at the hotel. And I also couldn't afford to eat dinner with the people. And so I would just kind of hide at night and go down to the 7-Eleven, get my little Lunchable, and show up and do the work. Another thing that we have shared stories that you may have heard is that when Michael, I believe, this is my take on it, and then you can share your side of the story. But I believe like kind of the thought of heroic public speaking was kind of tested on our group. And this is when Michael was like, all right, some of you want to be speakers. I'm going to have you guys come up to the front. And then we worked on this whole, my ability to present. He was coaching me. And then he just asked me at lunch, he was like, Rosa Parks, like that many years later. And it was the Rosa Parks story. And I've shared with you how many times he made me say, not today. And so Rosa Parks stood on the bus stop, got on the bus and said, not today. And he was like, you said it like there's 2 T's. Right. Rosa Parks said, not today. And he was like, that's not what she said. It's not today. Okay. Rosa Parks said, not today. No, not. And so I said, not today, like 100 times. And that was so useful that, in fact, then to Lacey's story, Michael came to San Francisco where we were living, did a creative live. And I was like, Michael, can we do the creative live, but promise me that you'll work with Lacey? And so sure enough, we did the creative live. He worked with Lacey. That creative live is still available. A lot of times people will tell us, they will call us or send us a screenshot. It is remarkable the work that Michael did with Lacey and her speaking ability. It's also remarkable with me, and I'm really good at saying not today. Like I'm really good at that. But he literally changed her voice. And how important is that, right? Like, how important is your voice? Like, we talk about your voice and your actual speaking voice as an instrument, but your voice, your message, your ability to share a message to the world. So he's done all of that for us. We're going to see if he can do just even a fraction of that for you. That will make our time together very much worth it. I wanted to start with this.
Yes.
Tell us What we're not going to do is just walk you systematically through Book Yourself Solid like this is a 5-day challenge. You have an opportunity to get that all the time. But I think if we can give you some insights into Book Yourself Solid, it will be incredibly useful for all of you in the room. So tell us, I know a little bit about the creation story, but tell us the creation story. How does Book Yourself Solid come to be?
I think it was born out of my dyslexia and my dislike for typical marketing and sales tactics. So I really wasn't particularly comfortable with the way that I saw many service business owners approaching marketing and sales. And I really do think fundamentally that there's no one right way to do anything. I think that's really critically important. There is no one right way to do anything, and we should choose the path that is most appropriate for us based on our own value system and what we feel comfortable with. But for me, when I started reading books and I was trying to learn about marketing and sales, it just didn't really sit well with me, the approach that people often took. Because I wanted to have, it's going to sound a little freaky, but I wanted to have a love affair with the people that I served. Like I wanted to make the work that I did something magical, something that would make it worth the work. Because it's hard. It is hard to do great things. Nobody who has ever done great things had it come easily. That's just not how it works. So I figured if it's going to be hard, if I'm going to have to work hard, I want to love it. And I'm not going to love it unless I love the people I'm doing with it. I've got to love the people. It's got to be about the people first and foremost. And so when I started to think about how am I going to market and sell my business, I started figuring out an approach that would work for my value system. Now, the reason I mentioned the dyslexia is because I've been dyslexic for my whole life. That's how it works. And often, the way that information is presented to me doesn't make a lot of sense. So I have to reorganize it in a way that does. And as a result, I got pretty good at organizing information in a way that is consumable, easily consumable, very structured, very engineered, because nothing gets better when it gets more complicated. Nothing gets better when it gets more complicated. And the mistake that people make often when they're new in an information-based business, in a knowledge-based business, is they think they need to overwhelm people with information to show them how smart they are. Look how much I know. And that doesn't actually help the people that we serve. So I started building this system that just made sense to me, and I was using it with the people that I was working with. I wasn't teaching marketing at the time, but I just would say, hey, this is the thing that I use. What do you think? And it started working for them. So I started to adjust how I spent my time, and I started building Book Yourself Solid. And I was shocked because when I wrote that book, the first day it was released, it hit number 2 in the world on Amazon. Not like in a category, but in the world. A Dr. Oz book was number 1. But Dr. Oz was on Oprah that whole week. So, that's hard to compete with. It was also easier to do that in those days. It was 20 years ago, so the market was a little less flooded with books. But that's how it started. It just started from out of this dislike for the way that a lot of the folks that were teaching marketing and sales. And I think that dislike is an important concept to hone in on. Because the thing that is going to propel you forward and is going to help you do visionary work is the things that you dislike about your industry. So look, the last book I wrote is called The Referable Speaker. And it's for people who want to use speaking to advance their business or brand, but mostly focused on professional speakers, people who want to make money speaking. And we introduced, I had a writing partner, Andrew Davis, on it, and we introduced a concept that we call the Visionary Quest Matrix. The Visionary Quest Matrix. Because what we recognized is that today, being an expert is not that valuable. 20 years ago, it was. But now, you can go onto YouTube, and you can learn anything about anything. You want to learn how to catch rockfish? There's going to be a lot of people teaching you videos on how to catch rockfish. You want to learn how to weave a basket? There's 1,000 experts who will tell you how to weave a basket. So today, expertise has become commoditized. And when something becomes commoditized, if there's many, many, many people offering the same thing, what happens to the value of that thing? It goes down. So if expertise has become commoditized, what is the thing that is most valuable in the marketplace? Visionary work. Visionary work. Now, what's visionary work? A visionary is somebody who challenges the status quo solutions. A visionary is somebody who says, I see a really big problem, an intractable problem, a problem that is not getting solved by today's best practices, and they offer an alternative solution, an alternative approach, another way of thinking about it, another way of going about it, another way of looking at it, another methodology that will help solve the problem. Because what the experts do is they hold up today's best practices. They go, here you go, here's today's best practices. But what happens tomorrow? You're just chasing tomorrow's best practices. You know, it's the fight for tips. Who's got more or less tips? I got 6 tips to show you how many followers you can get on YouTube. I got 7. No. I can do it in 5. You only need 5. It's just a race to the bottom of tips. Now, that's not a bad place to start. Meaning, we all have to start somewhere. We may not know what the big intractable problem in our industry is until we do expert-driven work. And expert-driven work can pay the bills. No doubt about it. Expert-driven work is valuable because lots of people need to know stuff that experts know. But, you know, if you ask what's the thing that 20 years later made Book Yourself Solid still one of the best-selling marketing books in the world for service business owners, and why is Heroic the #1 educational institution in the world for speaking, for thought leadership? It's because without realizing it, early on in my career, I identified problems that were not being solved for everyone, and I challenged them. So Book Yourself Solid challenges the status quo around marketing and selling, because what's the status quo? The status quo is, look, here's what you do. You use these marketing tactics, these self-promotion strategies. You just take these and you keep throwing them at people. You throw them as hard as you can at people, and that's going to book you business. But it doesn't. If it did, everybody could do it. What I thought, and I believe strongly, is that what actually books you the business is what happens once somebody becomes aware of you. That's why I built a system designed to help service business owners book the business once somebody becomes aware of them. Because building awareness is not hard. It's not that hard to build awareness. So it's not, that old expression like, it's not what you know that matters, it's who you know. You've heard that? It's not what you know that matters, it's who you know. I take issue with that expression. Because I actually think it's not what you know that matters, it's who knows what you know that matters. So yeah, okay, now they know, great. but can you move them into a relationship where they want to work with you? And so, you're going to be, all of you are at different stages of development in your business. And I think it's really important to recognize the stage that you're at. Never try to pretend you're at a stage farther than you are, because then you'll never get there. After 20 years of being in this industry, I can't tell you how many times I go to places and everybody's doing the, I'm amazing, everything is amazing. Everything's amazing, everything's perfect. I mean, nothing's working. But everything's perfect. But nothing's working. Everybody's puffing themselves up, right? I want to make sure everybody knows I'm amazing. But the fact of the matter is, if we are so amazing and things aren't working, we're not going to be able to fix them until we recognize really where we are in the business. What stage of development are we in? So some of you are in an early stage, some of you are in later stages. We're all at different stages. And so in the early stages, you might be at the expert stage. It's a great place to be. But what you're doing now is starting to look for, what are the big problems that are not being solved in my space? What's the issue what pisses me off about my space? Not the old app, for those of you who are our age, not that. But what pisses you off about the industry you're in, the space you're working in? And how do you want to offer a solution that might be different than what other people are offering? It doesn't need to be so dramatically different that nobody understands it. That's not going to work. But sometimes just slight tweaks are innovative in and of themselves. Slight changes. And keep it simple.
That's awesome. Let's look at your experience, early days, working with service providers, knowing the system, trying to shake things up. Can you recall on some of the mistakes that service providers typically make? Because I got the book, I read it, why isn't it working for me? What are some of the...
How much time do we have?
Well, as much as you need.
I have a long list.
Okay.
I could just give you all of my mistakes,
Yeah.
not even what I've seen people make. Oh my God, I feel like if I had a nickel for every mistake I made, I would have made a lot more money than I've made. I mean, mistakes are so normal. Look, I don't know if you know, but I started as an actor. That was my first career. So I got a master's in acting from NYU, and then I worked for 4 years as an actor. I was on Sex and the City and Third Watch and All My Children and Law and Order, and I did a lot of commercials and voiceovers. Voiceovers was actually how I paid the rent when in between jobs. So for those of you, again, who are around our age, you might remember the 1-800-CALL-ATT. Remember those? That was me. At Pizza Hut, we've got so many pizzas, you can do something different every day. So many pizzas, one great deal. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you laugh. But think about sitting in a booth for 8 hours a day doing that. So here's what happens. There's a whole line of creative director types from the agency, and you're in the booth. And so I did these for Braun for a while. So one day I went in and the copy was Braun, smart thinking. That was it. That was the whole thing. Just with a little tag at the end. It was like this, Braun, smart thinking. Okay, that's it. So I do Braun, smart thinking. One of them goes, well, could you do it with a little more rye? Rye. Now, I'm like 23. I'm like, I don't know what rye is, but okay, here we go. Braun, smart thinking. Another guy goes, could you do it with a little more pep? Okay. Braun, smart thinking. I mean, this is the job. You want to do that for 8 hours, you will lose your mind. I wanted to build stuff. I wanted to make stuff. So for me, it wasn't an interesting experience. I loved the work when you were doing the real creative work, but I bring it up because my training, for 3 years as an actor doing classical training, what the number one thing we learned is that you progress through failure. It's the only way forward as a creative performer. So here's the thing. The aggregate of anything you build, whether it's a script or a speech or a business or a book, the aggregate of anything you build is simply made up of the choices you make. That's it. It's just the choices you make. But as an actor, your job is to keep making really big, committed choices. Because if you don't make big, committed choices, you're boring. What happens is you make really big, committed choices, most of the time you're bad, meaning the choices don't work. So you'd always rather be bad than boring. Because 10% of the choices you make work. And those are the ones you keep. And you get rid of the ones that you don't. Round of applause if you're married. Round of applause if you're married. Or in a relationship of some kind of note. Okay. Round of applause if you dated people before you got married. Okay. So you decided those weren't the right choice. But you made a lot of choices until you found the choice that worked. Some of you have been married once, twice, 3 times. Can I get a 4? But until you finally said, this is the choice that works for me. And so I was very comfortable with that. And the biggest mistake that I see people make, to your question, is they're not willing to make choices that they don't think. They're not willing to make choices because they're afraid they won't work. They won't work most of the time. Most of the things you try will not work. But if we're okay with that, it doesn't mean you're happy with it. You're not like, yay, failure. You're like, this fucking sucks. I hate every second of it not working. And that forces you to, drives you to make other choices that hopefully will work. So I'm not like, I'm not comfortable with any of it. I'm uncomfortable with every single thing that I try that doesn't work. I hate it. But I know that that's how you get to the good stuff. So maybe you're familiar with Ira Glass. Ira Glass is the host of This American Life on NPR, one of the most famous creative producers and storytellers working today. And Ira Glass said that when people choose a new endeavor, they want to go into something new, and he was referring to creativity, but a business is a creative endeavor. Branding is creativity. Product design is creativity. Marketing is creativity. Sales design is creativity. When people usually go into a creative endeavor, they have high taste for that thing. That's why they chose that thing. But when they first start trying to make something in that particular field or space, the thing they make isn't as good as their taste. It's not as good as they want it to be. They have better taste than the thing they made. And what happens? We get frustrated. So we throw it away and we quit. We go, it's not good enough. I'm not doing it. But the people who do well over time, Ira said, especially creative artists, are the ones who say, I'm going to keep iterating. I'm going to aerate, iterate, aerate, iterate, aerate, iterate, aerate, iterate, until I can make something that is as good as my taste. But what happens when you actually do make something as good as your taste? Your taste goes up. Yeah, higher. So then guess what? The next time you try to make the thing, you can't make something as good as your taste because you don't yet have the craft for it. So, when you said, I changed Lacey's voice, or, I did this miraculous thing with the Rosa Parks thing, there's no magic in it. It's all craft. It's 100% craft. It's just craft. It's a craft that I studied for years and years and years and years, and now decades. So the craft takes time to develop. And so it's okay if you're not making something as good as your taste, but you ship it anyway. And then we keep going from there. You feel me?
How many of you are enjoying the performance? Okay. Because I want to transition a little bit there. You know Todd Herman.
I do.
Alter ego effect. You actually, one of the things that you taught me in the speaking world that really comforted me was that public speaking was a performance.
Yes.
So there is, you're drawing on your acting, there's a character. You're going to step into this role. And I was like, wow, that's super cool. This is an awful lot like alter ego, right? So I can be Sean the speaker. That's comforting because the regular Sean is quiet and introverted and doesn't want to speak on a stage. And I'm thinking for the sake of this weekend, I would love to hear your take on applying that to sales. Because if I'm going to sell someone, even if I'm a high ticket, I'm going to sit down with you, I can employ those same concepts. I can become the role. Todd does this when he wears the glasses, right? I can become the role. Give us some tips on how I can become that persona.
That's right. So I love that you mentioned Todd. Todd came to spend a day with me to work on his alter ego speech. And he was working on it because he got a keynote for Archangel. You know Archangel, the group Archangel? So it was a big keynote, and the other speakers were some really big name speakers. And so he's like, I want to nail this. There's going to be thousands of people there in the convention center in Toronto. So he came and spent a day, and he went and did it, and he was the highest evaluated speaker at the entire event. Highest evaluated speaker at the entire event. Simply because what we focus on is creating transformational experiences for an audience. Now, what's a transformational experience for an audience? A transformational experience for an audience is where they leave seeing the world differently than when they came in. They leave seeing the world differently than when they came in. Now, in order to do that, a few things need to happen. Number one, we need to build a speech, an experience that lives at the intersection of insight and entertainment. An experience that lives at the intersection of insight and entertainment. Think of a circle with the word insight in it. Think of a circle with the word entertainment in it. And where the two circles cross each other, that space is transformation. Now, most people, when they deliver a speech, they think, what do I want to tell them? What information do I want to share? And then they pull out a slide, like PowerPoint or Keynote, and put some bullet points on the slide, create an outline for it, and go, great, I got my outline, I'm an expert, I'll use my dummy monitor, is what it's called, the monitor at the bottom of the stage. I use my dummy monitor as my notes, and then I'll just wing it inside of that. I'll riff off of that. Now, the audience may get some good and even helpful information, but they may not do anything with it of note because they didn't change. So what do we need to impart in order for people to change when they leave an experience that we led? When you are on stage, your job is the transfer of emotion first and information second. Emotion first, information second. Because if you want to get people to do something, what do you need to do first? You need to get them to think differently. But if you want to get people to think differently, what do you need to do first? Get them to feel differently. So when you work on any kind of presentation that you're going to give, this could be in front of a room on a stage, or it could be a sales conversation. You build that entire sales conversation, you build the entire presentation around that framework. What do I want them to feel? What do I want them to think? And what do I want them to do? So if we start with the how do I want them to feel, now we're thinking more deeply about the people, them, the person you're talking to, their experience, rather than what you're going to tell them. It's always audience first. It's not speaker first. It's never about you when you're on stage or in a sales conversation, ever, which is one of the best ways to reduce the anxiety around it. As soon as you start thinking it's about you, your anxiety goes through the roof. I had a student, we refer to the people we work with as students, not clients, because we built an educational institution specifically because the work that we ask people to do can be provocative. You know, people go through major transformation when they do this work, because you can't hide when you're on the stage. I mean, it's the best place to do really, really fast transformational work. And when you have a client relationship, the client thinks they're in charge because they're paying. But when they're students, the teacher is in charge. So we make that a very, very clear distinction. So I had a student call me up, and she said, Michael, oh my God, I'm freaking out. I just got I got an opportunity to be interviewed on Good Morning America for my new book. Now, mind you, she'd been working to get this for 6 months. And she's like, Michael, I'm petrified, I'm terrified. What do I do to be good? I said, you can't. And I took a big beat, big pause. I just waited. And I could just hear her brain on the other end of the phone going, what did he just say? Does he say I'm not good? And she said, what do you mean? Am I not good? I said, no, of course not. But we can't go into any performative environment trying to be good, because that's about you. I said, can you go into that interview and help them? Can you be helpful? She said, of course, Michael. Are you a moron? I was like, well, maybe, but, not in this case. She said, yes, of course I can be helpful. And I said, well, then that's all you got to do, because that's your job. So afterwards, she calls me up. She goes, Michael, I did it. I was so helpful. Then I said, so what did the producers tell you afterwards? She said, they said I was really good. Because when you're helpful, people think you're good. But if you try to be helpful, if you try to be good, then they just think you're an egoist. And there's lots of narcissists in our industry. You've seen them. But generally, they're not the people, with whom you resonate the strongest. So if you have anxiety about having sales conversations, if you have anxiety about getting up and speaking in front of folks, it's totally normal. I do. I get nervous. I'm like, I haven't talked about Book Yourself Solid in a decade. I sold the business. What do I know about this anymore? My coaches know this stuff better than I do. I've written numerous books. I've written 8 books since I wrote that book. I don't even remember. That's what's going through my head. And I've given probably, I don't know, thousands of speeches. But everybody gets nervous because they want to do a good job. So then I just say, no, Michael, just try to be helpful. Just try to be helpful. Just figure out how can you be helpful. That's it. So when you're in those sales conversations, the best way to reduce anxiety is twofold. Number one, as we discussed, focus on them. How do you want them to feel? What do you want them to think? And then what do you want them to do? Focus on the feeling first, always the feeling. Moment to moment to moment to moment in that conversation, how do you want them to feel? What actions are you playing? Are you trying to soothe them? Maybe you want to provoke them at one moment in the sales conversation. Maybe you want to excite them at another moment. This is a technique, very, very effective technique from acting called playing actions. You play actions to influence how other people feel. That's what the actor does to bring a scene to life. But we all do it in real life all the time. We just are not conscious of it. But as soon as you become conscious of it, you have the craft and the ability to do it, well, then you can be very intentional about it. How do I want this person to feel in this very moment? Throughout this whole sales conversation, can I map the emotional journey that I want them to have? So we take the onus off us and we put it on them. We're not worried, how do I look? Do they like my hair? I gained 5 pounds. What are they going to think? Nobody cares about that stuff except you. And then the second thing is to actually be prepared. Now, hold on. I know that's obvious, except when people give speeches, have you found that most people who give speeches are not really prepared? Most speeches, and I'm sure you've done this, I have done this too, they wing the speech. They just wing it. I'm an expert. I know what I'm talking about, so I'll just talk it. And you know what? I'll rise to the occasion. But I guess what? A little secret for you? Here, lean in, because I don't want Sean to know this. Here, come and lean in. I want to whisper it really quietly. Yep, even you in the back. Come on. Yep, thank you very much. Okay. Nobody ever rises to the occasion. Thank you very much. That's all I had to say. No, but the military say this all the time. You don't rise to the occasion, you fall back on your training. You always fall back on your preparation. And if you're not prepared, if you're not well trained, you're not going to do something amazing. Look, if you ever gave a speech and then you got off afterwards and you're like, oh my God, that was amazing. I'm fired up. I have no idea what I did, but man, I'm fired up. The speech did not work. I can promise you that. Because when you're prepared and when you're an experienced performer, you can see and remember every single moment, second by second by second by second. You can see yourself while you're performing. Anybody that has mastered a particular discipline, a physical discipline, whether it's a martial arts or dance, anything, you've had that experience. You can watch yourself while you're doing it. So if you don't remember what you did, it means you were doing it for yourself. It was what we call masturbatory. You weren't making love to them, you were making love to yourself. Which is lovely, but not really what you should do in front of an audience.
My colleagues like to just get up and say, my innate will speak to me.
Yes.
Which is code for, I have prepared nothing for you today.
Now here's the thing, but let me make sure that we all let ourselves off the hook about this. Because the reason that people don't prepare for speeches properly is because they have no idea how. And how would you have any idea how? You have to train in this stuff. The only reason I knew how to do it when I got into speaking was because I was a professional actor. But acting is not the same thing. So my first couple of years, I was still probably more effective than most because the way that I could move on a stage, the way that I could perform on a stage, the way that I could use my voice on a stage was more advanced. But in terms of designing, structuring speeches, that I knew nothing about that. That took years to develop. So you cannot blame yourself. You can't go, oh my God, Michael just beat me up because I was winging it. Of course you're winging it. How else would you do it? And how do we learn? Human beings, animals, we all learn by copying. So we see somebody, and we say, oh, I'll do it that way, because that's a person's really famous in my industry. But that doesn't mean that what they're doing is it really effective or as effective as it could be. It's a little bit like if you saw somebody's website, you're like, oh my God, that website looks so cool, I'm going to copy it. but you have no idea if it's actually effective. You have no idea if it converts well. Everybody might bounce right off the page. You saw no analytics. So if you don't have training in something, you should not expect that you could do it. It's like, let's say, so we train, I love working with veterans. We have tons and tons of veterans. We've got a general just came through one of the programs. We've had admirals, Navy SEALs, Green Berets. Like, these are the people who have done the hardest training in the world in the most intense environments you could possibly imagine. And what I love about these folks is that whatever I ask them to do, they do. And they get good so much faster than most people. But let me tell you, if you know any Navy SEALs, tell me if this is true. There's two ways that Navy SEALs sit. They would never sit in this chair, by the way. They don't have glasses like these. They sit like this. That's one way. Or that's the other way. Two ways. Anyhow, the reason I mention it is because if, let's say one of these guys, let's say Steve Drum, who is a Master Chief, retired Navy SEAL, he said, hey, Michael, listen, I got to go back into combat. I know that you have no experience as a soldier whatsoever. You have no idea how to handle the weapons. You don't know anything about the communication. Certainly you know nothing about tactics. But listen, I'm going to give you all the gear. I'm just going to plop you right in the middle of a really, really intense firefight. I'm sure you'll rise to the occasion. But because this isn't life or death, we think we can. You know that study they always say that public speaking is you heard they say, there's a study that says public speaking is the number one fear and death is the number two fear? You know that's nonsense. That's not what the study reported. The study reported that people think more often about their fear of public speaking than dying. Obviously, because you got to speak every day. Fortunately, you don't have to die every day. So yeah, it's a little scary because we've got to do it regularly. We think about it a lot, but it's not actually our number one fear, to be fair.
I want to talk about improv. Another thing that you helped me with tremendously that I think it would be helpful, because in a speech, in a keynote, I'm going to just deliver the keynote. I have the script. I know what I'm going to say. I know my staging and blocking. I know my tonalities. In a sales presentation, there's another person.
Yeah.
They don't have the script.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're like, oh my gosh, that's so great, but what about the price of Bitcoin? And now we're off and I'm like, wait, why are you talking about Bitcoin? Help us to take some strategies from improv and how we could apply that in sales.
Sure. I love improv. But there's a reason that improv is very inexpensive to go watch, and it's very expensive to go get a ticket for Hamilton. Like, you can go to see an improv, thing for $35 plus a couple drinks. It's going to cost you $1,500 minimum to go see Hamilton. And the reason is because sometimes improv works and sometimes it doesn't. But Hamilton always works. And that's the difference between just winging a speech and being prepared. When they do Hamilton each night, it's the same thing every single night. But something, every once in a while, it goes off. Like, you know what I mean? Someone's cell phone goes off, somebody forgets their line, somebody misses an entrance, and they've got to improv. And so what great performers do, great salespeople do, great leaders do, is they use the improvisational philosophy or principle of yes and. Yes and is the fundamental tenet of improvisation. So, if you did not follow this tenet, let's say Sean and I are doing an improv scene, okay, and I come in, I'm like, oh my God, I broke my leg. And he goes, no, you didn't, you're fine. Okay, I guess I'm fine. It would kill it. It would be done, it would be over. But if I walk in and go, oh my God, I broke my leg, and he gets up and he goes, oh, come, here, let me get you in the chair, sit down. What happened? He's saying yes and. And I can say, oh, wow, I was getting my hair done and all the chemicals made me really, really confused and dizzy. I passed out, and broke my leg. He goes, that's amazing. Your hair looks much better than it used to, which would get a laugh because I don't have hair. Because we're yes-anding it. It's all you have to do. Yes and, yes and, yes and. So he says, what about the price of Bitcoin? Yes, I totally understand why you would think about Bitcoin in this very moment. And then you can move it back to the direction that you want to go. Yes, I totally understand why you would think about Bitcoin in this moment. I imagine it's because of this, this, and this. Or is it because of this and this? And when I ask him, is it because of this and this? He goes, yes, that's what I'm worried about. Like, are you interested? Let's say I'm a financial advisor. He goes, what about Bitcoin? And I say, oh my God, of course, I totally understand why you would ask about Bitcoin. It's everywhere right now. You know, this SEC just approved Bitcoin ETFs, and so everybody's, piling in. And I imagine, is it because you want more diversity, or you want like a quick win? What are you looking for? He goes, yes, I would love quick wins. I would love put 100 grand in right now, get 100 grand back, plus another 50 grand tomorrow. I'd love that. I would love that too. That's a yes and. But then we've got to get him back to reality. And we can start to move it to, so how would you feel if it went the other way? Like you put 100 grand in, and tomorrow you had 50 grand. I wouldn't like that at all. Yeah, me neither. Yes and, yes and, yes and, yes and. I love talking to people who drive cars, car services, because they talk to so many people, and so they often develop really interesting ways of communicating, because they got to talk to different types of people. And often a person who drives a car likes to talk to people. That's what I've found. It's anecdotal. I have no data to back it up, but this has been my experience. And one of the guy that I had at 3 a.m. this morning when I was going to the airport, we started talking, and he said, I saw your email, and so I looked at your website, and I got a little nervous to talk to you, because I know you're really good at speaking. And so I'm a little uncomfortable. Do you have any tips for me on how to, be more comfortable? And I was like, oh my God, I totally understand that. I am uncomfortable all the time too. Yes, and I said, but here's the thing. You know what people love? They love when other people ask them why. Unless they're children. You hate when your children say why. Why? Because I said so. That's the answer. No, but if I'm a little uncomfortable and I just meet this guy, Sean, he's like he owns Book Yourself Solid. I mean, think about that. The guy, he first shows up, he didn't have the money to come, and now he owns the thing. I'm just saying, that's incredible, right?
Yes.
You should be really proud of yourself. Really proud of yourself. I think that's amazing. That's absolutely extraordinary. So I said, well, you know what you do? If you get a little nervous, just ask them why. So let's say, we were talking a little nervous, and Sean was wearing a shirt that had a diamond on it. Like all the black shirts with the diamonds. I said, why is there a diamond on your shirt? Oh, he said, because I own a company called the Black Diamond Club. Why is it called the Black Diamond Club? Oh, well, because of this, this, and this. Oh, why'd you get into that in the first place? Oh, because I really wanted to help people with this. Why was that interesting to you? He does all the talking. Why? Just ask people why. Why are you interested in that?
One point and one last question for you. I love that you said that, because one of the pieces that I wanted to make sure that we got in this weekend on sales is you used a word, so I want to just highlight this. So important. Even just in role play, Michael said, how do you feel about that? And so important, because when we think about scripting and sales, one of the points I wanted to make sure we made is so many of you hate the objection, I need to think about it. But if we look at your script, you literally say, Alika, what do you think about this offer? What do you think about it? And Michael said, what do you feel? Alika, how do you feel about this offer? How do you feel about moving forward? How do you feel about the commit? Feel is a way better word than think, because I've already pre-programmed him to say, that's interesting. I think I need to think more about it. Because I just asked him to think, how do you think this would work? And so using that word, words are critical. That's why I love this idea of scripting. Can you tell, even though it is basically improv, that Michael's words are thought? Like you're on tape delay. He's thinking, then it hits his mouth, and they're chosen. And not only the words are chosen, but how you say them, right? The pauses, the tonality, everything. And that's a skill that you should acquire. A lot of you want to hone your craft at speaking. I know that we have several speakers here. I know that LaShawn is coming over from doing a presentation in front of several thousand people today. I know for a fact that every single one of you that wants to speak on a stage can benefit greatly from heroic public speaking. The number of people that I've sent, and Mark Murphy now is joining us, the number of people that Mark has sent to heroic public speaking. If you want to speak, this is a course. This is the course that you should be enrolled in. And speaking doesn't mean just from a stage. So speaking is communication. If you want to speak in front of one person, this is the course that will help you to get your mindset straight, understand, formulate what I want to say, also formulate and train on how I'm going to say it. In conclusion, I want to know why, like obviously heroic public speaking going super well, why this decision, how do our paths recross? Why did you decide to get out of Book Yourself Solid?
Oh, well, I'm a creative, so I like to make things. And so once I made it, I felt like, okay, I made it. And I think maybe it's time for someone else to take it and take it to the next level. And now, I've been creating in heroic for 10 years. We'll likely exit within the next couple of years. We had a couple offers in 2022, and people are kind of circling. But, waiting for the right time. I just love making stuff. I think it's really important to recognize that each one of us has a particular set of skills, and if we're bright, we can do lots of stuff. But sometimes we forget that actually there's a sweet spot for us. Even though we can do this, and this, it's not really our sweet spot. And if you spend a lot of time doing things that's not in your sweet spot, it's not so sweet. So for me, usually for me, each endeavor is about 10 years, what I find. I'm 53, so I've found like 3 10-year sort of chunks for me. And that's the way I've kind of decided to approach things, because maybe you could do something more meaningful faster than 10 years, but I like the idea of committing to that longer term, because it's just too easy to quit things. I mean, non-reversible commitments are, to me, the sexiest thing in the world. There was a study done on these 2 groups of people that bought ceiling fans. The fans that are on the ceiling that make a breeze. Well, they did this study where with one group, they sold the fans with a lifetime money-back guarantee. And with the other group, they sold it all sales final. And then they tracked how these people felt about the fan over many, many years. And here's what they found happened. Actually, do you want to guess? Let's do a little guessing. Round of applause if you feel that the people who had a money-back guarantee were more satisfied with their purchase. Round of applause. Round of applause if you feel that the people for whom all sales were final were more satisfied with their purchase. 50-50? Okay, 50-50. In fact, by an overwhelming majority, the people who were most satisfied with their purchase were the people where all sales were final. Why? Because here's what happened. So let's say a husband and wife go and buy the fan and they can get all their money back. Well, they take it home, they put it in, they look at it, and they're like, I don't know, does it go? And the wife says to the husband, I don't think you were right with this one. I think that's the wrong color. And he says, no, I think it's the right, well maybe, but I think it's the right color, but I don't think it's the right shape, and you wanted that shape. They're like, I don't know, we'll just leave it, we'll see what happens, we have a money back guarantee, it's fine. Well, next thing you know, they get a new dishwasher, and the dishwasher doesn't go with the fan. They're like, see, the fan is not great. It doesn't go with the dishwasher. Maybe we should return it. But the work that we have to do to take the fan out of the ceiling and return it, oh, that's too much. But the people for whom all sales were final, this is what they did. They went, they put it up, and they went, that's pretty good. That's a good choice we made. Okay, and then they went about their life. And so I realized early on that the way to help people do hard things, and you got to do hard things to do great things, and you don't have to build a $100 million business. Like, there's no need for that. Build whatever size business you want to build. It's really important to do it your way. Don't get success bullied. Build whatever you want to build in your way. No matter what, it's going to be hard. The easiest way to help people do hard things is by helping them make non-reversible commitments. So we did no money-back guarantees for our programming. And when we started that, success rates went up, NPS scores went up. If you're familiar with the NPS score ranges from negative 100 to positive 100. Negative 100 to positive 100. So if you're negative 100, everybody hates you. If you're a positive 100, you're flawless. Almost nobody's a positive 100. Apple is like a 65, and Apple's a beloved company. Heroic, for our primary events, we get 99s as average. Because we really understand, we've worked for a long time, a decade I did on Book Yourself Solid, a decade for this, on helping people follow through on their commitments. Because if you follow through on your commitment, you're going to do well. If you do well, you're going to be happy. And so, if you can help the people that you serve make non-reversible commitments to the work that you're doing with them, they're going to do better work. Because, when things get hard, like I want to just sit and watch Love is Blind. I got to say, love that show. Whenever Amy and I tell people, we're like, oh, we love Love is Blind, people are like, oh, I like you more now. We thought you were like serious people. We're like, what? No. Anyhow, some of you are like, what's Love is Blind? Anyhow, so you feel me on this? Full non-reversible commitment. You want to do something, you're going to do it fully, that's it. So that's why I like, for me personally, 10 years. Someone else might be 5 years, someone else may be 3 years. It's to each their own. There is no one right way to do anything. Other than always travel with snacks. Very important. Very important. I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. No one right way to do anything. Most business problems are personal problems in disguise. Mm-hmm. Plus delta exercise. Not today. So many things that have come from Michael through us and hopefully to you. Thank you for spending the time with us. We super appreciate that.
My pleasure.
For everybody in the room, this concludes this section, but we're going to scramble around. You guys have to be efficient and effective, but any of you who would like to get a picture with Michael and a book sign, we're going to ask you to make a line right here, and we're going to get that going. Thank you, Michael. We super appreciate you.